Hi friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Kirsten. If you're new here, welcome. I'm going to talk about pointe shoes today, the very basics of pointe shoes. This is mostly for people who have never worn pointe shoes before and might be curious as to how they work and how we, manipulate them, or what we wear inside of the pointe shoes to make daily use of them bearable, I guess. Though we're not in pain every day. But anyway, I'm going to address some questions about the pointe shoes themselves, about how female dancers wear them every day and what that's like, and just the basics all about pointe shoes. So you might learn some things. Also, if you have worn pointe shoes before or you're just getting started, this is for everybody. So I do hope you enjoy and learn a few new things. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do before I address questions about wearing pointe shoes is I'm going to just show you a pointe shoe. This one is brand new. I don't usually wear this kind. It's got a drawstring that is elastic, so it kind of shrivels up when I'm not wearing it. But for those of you who are familiar with the different brands of pointe shoes, these are Freed of London. That's the brand. Or we just call them Freeds. So for those of you who know nothing of pointe shoes, there are many different brands that cater towards different types of feet, different shapes of toes. There can be so many different varieties of feet within, the group of female dancers that wear them. For instance, your toes can be kind of thicker or flatter. Your arch on your foot can be higher up, lower down. You could have longer toes, shorter toes, kind of tapered foot. So that means when you point your foot, your toes kind of go to one point rather than all the toes kind of evening out onto one surface. There are so many different types: narrow feet, wide feet. So therefore, that is why there are so many different kinds of brands, so that a dancer can find one that really fits her foot. Because if your shoe does not fit perfectly, it will be painful and cause unnecessary rubbing on certain parts of their skin, or too much weight being put on one toe rather than distributed over several toes. So that is why so much care is put into finding a shoe that fits very well for your foot. Also, this is called the shank, what is normally called the sole of a shoe. We call it a shank. And some dancers, for instance in Freeds, you can actually peel back this layer inside of the shoe. There are multiple layers to the shank, and you can cut one portion of the shoe or the shank so that it molds to your arch when it bends against your foot, rather than kind of staying like this and your foot is bending on the inside. But that's just one little trick. A lot of professionals do that, though if you have custom shoes, it's not always necessary. And yes, a lot of professional dancers, not all, but a lot of dancers, especially ones that are more experienced, they might be beyond the corps de ballet level, they might be soloists, principals. A lot of them will wear custom-made shoes. And for other dancers who are, I guess, newer in their careers, like myself, I don't wear custom shoes. I'm perfectly happy with the ones that I get without any modifications. So you might wonder how long a pointe shoe will typically last and how much it costs. So for a professional dancer that is dancing 5 to 6 days a week, and I'd say typically they're on pointe maybe 3 to 6 hours a day. That's just an estimate, although every company is going to be different and it will vary according to what repertoire they're rehearsing for. But with that factor of how much they're dancing, most dancers will go through a pair, I'd say, every week, sometimes on the generous end, I'd say 3 weeks, and a shoe is definitely dead. Some dancers can make them last a month, and I'd say that's crazy, that's awesome. But they do not last very long. A lot of principal dancers in leading companies I've heard they go through shoes every day or every couple of hours of wear because they're doing so much heavy dancing, and their companies have a very large budget for pointe shoes, and they will just go through them so that they can constantly have a perfect pair of shoes. Whereas in a company where you don't get as many shoes allotted to you, you kind of have to make it work, and you're dancing in shoes that are too soft, and you have to make them last longer because you only have so many allotted to you per season. That being said, for most companies, I'd say, that are not ones that have huge budgets. So for big companies, I've heard of dancers having anywhere from 75 to 150 pairs of shoes per season. Of course, 150 would be for a very elite dancer in that company. And the higher up you get in the ranks, the more shoes you get, because obviously that costs a lot of money. But I'd say, at least in my company, the average is 1 pair of shoes per week. As far as how much they cost, it varies, but in the professional realm, Freed of London is the standard shoe that is worn, though dancers will wear many other different types of shoes, from Block to Grishko or Gainer Minden, something like that. But I'd say they typically cost anywhere from, on average, $70 to $95. It could be as low as $65. For Grishko's, I believe they might have raised their prices, or a little over $100 maybe for custom shoes. So the price varies, but yes, they are very expensive. Now, how do we make them last longer, you might ask? A lot of dancers use something called jet glue, which looks like this, sorry for the glare, or pointe shoe glue, shellac, something, some sort of product where you can put the glue in strategic places in the shoe to make it harder before it has the chance to soften where it typically softens the most. And for most dancers, it will soften at the box, or platform, at the tip of the box. And for just a bit of shoe anatomy, this is the box, the part where your toes will go. The platform is what you stand on, this edge here. And as you can see, it is very small. This is the shank, like I said before. And the vamp is what we call the front of the shoe that covers the top of your toes up to your metatarsals, or a little over your metatarsals, I should say. So this is the vamp. The whole bottom is called the box. This is the shank and the platform. So most dancers will typically wear out the box first from standing on their toes so much, typically around where your big toe is, or just generally at the front of the box if they're pushing over their shoe. Also, the shank will die. Usually those are the two areas where the shoe really, as we say, dies or goes dead. That's what we call it when it really softens to the point of no return. So a lot of dancers will use jet glue to place it at the bottom of the box where the platform is, and sometimes at the side of the shank on the inside, to reinforce that demi-point, because the more you wear it, the more this area will soften, because we're not only dancing on pointe, but we're also rolling through that shoe and running around on our demi-point, which is like on the bottom of your toes to the ball of your foot rather than on your toes. Some dancers also put glue around here where their arch will bend the shoe, or even on the outside down here if it's really getting that soft. Now, for how they come, it comes without ribbons or elastic. We have to sew those on ourselves, which is annoying and time consuming. Well, it doesn't always take that much time, maybe 20 minutes or 10 minutes for some people who are really fast and don't do a lot of stitches. I think it probably takes me 15 minutes, but still, it's kind of a nuisance. Anyway, so we will sew the ribbons on to hold the shoe up and snug around our arch, so that the sides of the shoe don't kind of sag down. This elastic is purely to keep the shoe on our heel, or else every time we go up and down, the shoe would probably fall off or pop off the back of our heel. So the ribbons are not just for pulling up the side of the shoe, but also for the aesthetics of it. Usually people are familiar with the aesthetics of beautifully crossed ribbons around the ankle. Now, no, we do not tie them up our shin. It only goes neatly around the ankle. Um, Unlike many figurines and cartoon characters you've probably seen if you're not familiar with how we actually dance in them. Some dancers will crisscross their elastic to go here and here just for added support in the shoe, but not everyone does that. Then we also tie the drawstrings tight and then tuck them in. Not many dancers intentionally leave a little bow of their drawstring out of their shoe. It's seen as untidy and unprofessional, so we tuck in the drawstring after we tie it. As for what we wear in the pointe shoe, many people are interested in this. We wear toe pads. Some dancers simply use paper towels and fold them up around their toes to just provide a little bit of padding, but mostly just to protect their skin. If your shoe fits really well and it really supports your foot, you won't need as much padding because there's not so much pressure on one area of the foot. But recently I've tried out this brand of toe pads. This looks a little funny because it's a custom molded toe pad. It came with this fabric outside, and then I put this putty in the little sack, I guess, and pranced around in my pointe shoes in my apartment for a couple minutes, and then I let it harden, and it forms to the inside of my foot or my toes. It's pretty crazy, and I've really liked it. It's called Perfect Fit Pointe. If you're interested in trying that out, I do like it. A lot of dancers do wear something like the brand Ouch Pouch sells, which is just a simple covering for your metatarsal area and your toes. And it doesn't provide much padding, but just a little bit to take the edge off, and they will add something like cotton balls or kind of jelly toe spacers between the big spaces in their toes just to take up that extra space so their toes aren't really squeezing together. Believe it or not, dancers do want to actually feel the floor a little bit in their shoe, not to the point where it's extremely painful, but if you are very accustomed to wearing pointe shoes and experienced in it and you have a good amount of strength, it won't hurt you. You just need to feel the floor, to feel your balance point a little bit better, because if you have so much padding at the bottom of your shoe, you kind of feel like you're wobbling a little bit more than if you are feeling the point of contact with the floor and you're able to feel more secure and feel your balance, like I said. Now, a lot of dancers do get blisters and things like that and corns from just long hours of wear. A lot of times that occurs because we're standing around in our pointe shoes a lot and our feet sweat, and so the moisture combined with friction from dancing does cause the skin to rip sometimes, which is painful, though dancers often have calluses that have built up over the years and prevent us from getting skin damage mostly. But we will use tape if there are certain sensitive areas on our toes. I like to use this kind of tape. It's a cloth tape that doesn't rip easily. Some people will use kind of that tan, foamy, padded tape, which is nice. And sometimes it just does it to wrap this around one of your toes, around one of the knuckles, so that you don't get so much rubbing. But sometimes for a bruised toenail or something like that, dancers, like myself, will use this product called Second Skin, which is really neat. It's like these little jelly squares, and you just peel back the plastic layers, and it's this clear little gel type substance that kind of diverts the pressure, the direct pressure that's going on the area, and provides kind of a cooling sensation. It's really wonderful if you have some sort of toe problem going on. So you just place one of those squares on a bruised toenail or on a blister or a corn or whatever is causing you pain, put some tape over it and slap that pointe shoe on and go on with your day. So now I'm going to go ahead and address some questions now that we got some basics of pointe shoes out of the way. The first big question I often get is, how many years does it take to get on pointe? And this is another answer that has a lot of variability according to a dancer's age, strength, and training situation. But I'd say from the point where you start actually taking real ballet classes when you're young. A lot of dancers will go on Pointe when they are around the age of 11 or 12. Some dancers go on Pointe when they're 10, some younger, some older. It's definitely normal for some dancers to get their pointe shoes at 13 or 14 if you're at a smaller studio or if you started later. And if that's your situation and you still want to be a professional, don't worry. If you're older and you started later, it doesn't mean that you can't be a professional. You probably have more of a capacity and strength and aptitude in your body to progress faster and catch up with your peers. So don't worry if you do start late. It's not usually a big deal, but generally speaking, a lot of dancers will get their pointe shoes around the age of 12 after dancing for a couple years. So at that point, it could take a longer amount of time, a shorter amount of time, but I'd say usually once a dancer is training to where they're taking a full structured classical ballet class around the age of 10 or 11, they will take an extra year to either get their pointe shoes and take like a pre-pointe class or train in flat shoes a little bit more, doing a couple months of usually a pre-pointe class, they say, where you're doing specific strengthening exercises with TheraBands and really working to strengthen your ankles and your general technique so that you're ready to take what you already know how to do and do it in pointe shoes. But dancers will start very slow. They don't just go out and start dancing the exact same steps they're doing in flat shoes in the center. They will stay doing bar work, very simple bar work, just learning how to get on pointe and stay there and build up that strength and kind of that toughness, I guess, in their feet, getting used to the pointe shoes before they venture out and do more difficult things that require balance and coordination in the center. But I'd say typically a dancer needs to have at least 2 years of experience before they get pointe shoes for it to be safe for them. The next question is, does pointe hurt every single day or does it ever get comfortable? Now, it actually does get comfortable. I mean, as much as pointe shoes can be comfortable, a lot of times, like when nothing's wrong, you don't have any blisters, or you're not dancing so many hours in a day on pointe, a dancer won't really feel any pain at all. It's just second nature after you've trained for so many years in pointe shoes. And especially with the new technology and padding and all that and really well-fitted pointe shoes, like I said, the pressure is equally distributed on several of the toes rather than just one. So you won't feel any pain, any discomfort for the most part, at least at the beginning of the day, the work day. It feels normal because we've done it for so long. Now, perhaps at the end of the day, even if there are no injuries, nothing's wrong, your toes will start to get a little tender, a little sore. Your feet will kind of swell a little bit in the pointe shoe, and it's not that nice. But it's not really painful. It's just not nice. Now, sometimes pointe shoes certainly are painful. If you do have a corn, a blister, a bruised toenail, you're dancing a lot. But you kind of, after the initial shock of the first little bit, 30 minutes of the day or something like that, you'll kind of get used to it and it's bearable. However, I do want to say that dancers typically really enjoy dancing in pointe shoes. It's something that is fun. It's something that is unique and we really enjoy doing. So it's not like people are forcing us to put on these pointe shoes and we hate it and it's like a form of oppression for women and things like that. Now, that conversation can go very, very deep, but if a female dancer really, really, really hates wearing pointe shoes and it's that torturous, there usually wouldn't be a classical ballet dancer. There are options in the world of dance, so people don't typically feel like they're completely forced to do it and it's so miserable for them. We like it, and that's why there's this trade-off. We do it because we love it, even though, yes, it hurts sometimes, but that's just dance. One other thing I'd like to address is kind of the requirement of one's anatomy to be able to dance in pointe shoes. You do have to have a certain amount of ankle flexibility to where you're at least able to be having a straight-ish line from your shin to your foot instead of kind of this line where it's your shin and then your foot goes this way, so that you can get your weight completely over the pointe shoe and it's not settled back like this. I'll bring the pointe shoe back. So not like this, but you have to be able to stand on it at least like this, so that you get that flat balance point. Young dancers don't typically possess this at first unless they have really flexible ankles, so don't worry if that's you. But if you really do have the type of ankle where you have absolutely no, or it seems like no natural flexibility, pointe will be very hard for you. So usually dancers that make it to the professional level, being honest, do have somewhat of an arch naturally, and the ability to like comfortably and every time get up on their pointe shoe completely. That's a requirement. Now, don't be discouraged if you're young and you feel like your feet aren't very good or they don't have good shape. Mine didn't either when they were younger. If you look at me now, you'll videos of me dancing, pictures, you know that it's fine. I stretched my feet for many years. I used a foot stretcher and just did strengthening exercises and just really focused on my footwork in class, and it definitely got better to the point where I now have completely good, fine feet for ballet. So there is definitely a potential to improve the utility and aesthetic of your feet. So don't worry about that. Now, do you have to go to foot stretcher? Absolutely not. You can just do simple stretches on your arches with just your hands. Or there are many techniques for this. You could probably search it on the internet or, ask people. So anyway, I just didn't want to put that out there and make it seem like you have to get a foot stretcher. You totally don't. I haven't used that thing in like 10 years, so don't even worry. Okay, this video is getting quite long, so I'm gonna stop there, and I hope you guys will subscribe to stay tuned for the rest of this little Ballet for Dummies series that I've really enjoyed doing, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!